Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over the UFC card for this Saturday. And this video is going to talk about it from a DFS perspective. We're going to go through fight by fight and identify the best fights, the best fighters relative to their salaries that we can use to build, kind of good, I guess, conservative type lineups. We're going to do a separate video later on today or tomorrow where we completely focus on lineup construction, where we go ahead and build portfolios of lineups specifically designed to be unique and different. But that's not the purpose of this video. This is kind of your building block, video where we identify who the best plays are. When we figure out who we're actually going to play, that's completely different. And to be able to grasp that concept is really critical to being able to play daily fantasy sports. Just because someone's a good play doesn't mean you have to play them. You need to find guys that have good upside, that are not going to be owned by the entire civilized world in their lineups, because then you're, you know, basically risking giving up odds to other players. In other words, if you have a lineup that's duped like 50 times, and there's a lineup that projects like 2 points worse, that's unique. You're giving up incredible equity to that lineup. So you want to be that lineup that projects a little bit worse, that is going to be, getting huge, leverage and odds against lineups that maybe project a little bit better. But that's for a different video. Let's just go fight by fight and figure out what we want to do here. I feel as though this card has a little bit better underdog value than what I've been hearing throughout the industry. I've heard that this fight card is very bad for underdogs. I don't know why people are necessarily saying that. We're going to get to some really good, I think, really good underdog shots. We're also going to get to a fight which, well, fortunately or unfortunately, provides kind of a theoretical free square for the purposes of analyzing who the best plays are going to be. Unfortunately, that fighter is going to be extraordinarily high owned, so we have to figure out, what to do with that situation. And there are some fights which I think are complete fades. And there's a main event which is, I don't know, it's not particularly dynamic, which we're going to get to later on. All right, so the Miles Johns fight against Garbrandt, that was postponed. Let's just get started with probably a full fade fight. That's going to be Melissa Mullins versus Claudia Segula, a female fight with very, very poor inside the distance line metrics. You have at best, I mean, what's Segula? Segula inside the distance is probably plus 500. I'm imagining something like that. And not even like plus, well, she's plus 600. Dixon plus 250. I actually thought it would be worse, but it's still just really, really poor. And there's not a lot of takedown upside either. So this fight is probably just a complete pass. Then you have Trayshawn Gore versus Antonio Tricoli. I mean, they're both coming off of layoffs. And usually those fights don't really deliver. I mean, they're not in the greatest of shape. These fights usually end up kind of slow. Let's see what the projections kind of look like here with the metrics. I don't know. I mean, Gore inside the distance plus 150. I mean, that's actually not bad. Tricoli inside plus 250. I mean, look at some of these prices here. I mean, I guess it's not the worst play in the world. Wow. I mean, he's gonna be low owned. I mean, that's for sure. 8,600 at what did I say? Plus 150. That's actually not terrible. It's certainly not a core play or anything like that, but if I get to him in bigger GPPs, I think this is going to be okay. Tricoli is just barely on the outside looking in here. I just think they're better underdogs. All right, so this next fight, I think this is actually pretty interesting. So Damon Blackshear versus Cody Stamann. We have 8,900 and 7,300, and I don't think you're going to see particularly good inside the distance lines for either of these guys. Um, let's see. Blackshear plus 300, which you would never play at this price, and Stamann like plus 1,000, right? But what's interesting about this is that both of these fighters have quite a bit of grappling upside, you know. And when that happens, the fight can go a couple of ways. Yeah, number one is that the fight could kind of even out on the on the mat. No one will be able to take anybody down. It ends up being a really boring striking battle. I've seen that. But in addition to that, you could get kind of a wild grappling match with a lot of reversals, a lot of takedowns both ways, and uh which one of those fights we get, we don't know. But one thing I will say is that this fight's going to be probably really low owned. So if the fight is going to be really low owned, I can make a case for that, that grapple and grapple back and reversal and that type of thing for this fight. So I actually think this fight is pretty live. So I actually do like both sides of this, both Stamen and Blackshear. And we're going to see a couple of those. You have Charles Radke versus Matthew Semmelsberger. See, this fight, I really just think is going to deliver. You have two guys who they might be in one of those fights where if they lose, they get cut. And in fights like that, I mean, these guys are probably prone to just lay it all out there. And, Semmelsberger, he's really tough and not the greatest fight IQ in the world. And Radke has finished, he's gotten finished. I feel as though they could really be fireworks here. And unfortunately, the metrics are not really supporting that. Actually, that's not bad. So Radke and Semmelsberger both at 2+225 inside the distance. Um, I think that's pretty reasonable, especially look at the Semmelsberger side. This is not bad. Okay. And I don't think this is going to be that high owned because we're going to get to a mid-range fight, which is going to dominate all the ownership. And I don't know. I think that both sides of this fight are pretty in play. So I mean, right off the bat, between Gore and these two fights, I think you're off to a decent start with finding fights and fighters with okay upside that might not be played by everybody. I may as well deal with this. So, Zaleski dos Santos is against Zachary Scroggin, and fortunately or unfortunately, he was priced at 8,000 back when he was expected to fight somebody else. And now that they gave him Scroggin, they can't change his salary. And what you're left with here is a new fight, and Zaleski is like a minus 750 in this fight. So from a theoretical perspective, he's kind of a lock. Now we don't have the inside the distance lines here, but we can kind of derive this. I mean, if the under 2.5 is favored at minus 180, um, and Scrog and Dos Santos is like plus 800 or minus 800, I have to believe that when this line comes out, it's going to be, minus 140 or so inside for DeSantos, which, at 8,000 is just kind of unfadable. But I mean, a couple of things I will point out. I mean, when you look at his fight log, Dos Santos, I mean, he hasn't had a finish in a long time. Um, he hasn't had a finish since 2019. Was a first round sub though, and he did actually have three. Wow, he not only had three straight finishes, but one of them was a first round finish over Sean Strickland. Now again, this was what 6 years ago, but still, he used to have quite a bit of upside. He also has a win over Benoit Saint Denis. Um, boy, oh boy, like so. This is going to be a very very difficult fade. Now, from a tournament perspective, I mean, he's going to be extraordinarily popular. I would say 60% in the big lottery tournament and maybe 70% in bigger buy-ins. So, I mean, you can make the case that, for at 60, 70% ownership, if he doesn't, get a first or second round finish, and maybe he wins a boring 75-point decision that he could bust. And yeah, that's certainly within the range of outcomes. Um, and we'll talk about that when we get to, lineup construction really. But from a, who's the best play? He's obviously the best play. Um, okay. On the other hand, the problem with playing, okay, so what's the problem playing Scroggin? Well, The real issue with playing Scroggin is that he just doesn't win often enough. Um, his price, what did they give him? 6,800? Or did they not give him anything yet? I thought that I saw something. They didn't give him a price yet? Oh yeah, they did, 6,700. So the problem is he just doesn't win often enough. He wins only 15% of the time, so it's just kind of tough to play him. That's all. Now, with that said, if he wins, he's almost certainly going to be in the optimal. And in addition to that, he's going to knock out specifically the incredible amount of ownership that's going to be coming towards Dos Santos. So in the 150 match, you certainly have to play it. But as far as what the best play is, I mean, Dos Santos is clearly the best play. All right, moving on, we have Cortavius Ramius and against Gaston Bolanos. I think this fight could be kind of cool also. Let's look at the inside the distance lines here. You have Romanus with, what is he? Was he minus 110? Not quite. I mean, it's pretty close. I mean, he's minus, depends where you look, plus 150, minus 110, and that's a pretty good inside the distance line. And not to mention the fact he does have some wrestling, some takedown upside. So I think that he's very, very live. Um, his metrics look really, really strong. And what's cool about that is that everybody's going to see that. So the ownership on Romulus is probably going to be pretty strong, which means that Bolanos on the other side is probably a good leverage play if he looks decent at all. And you look at his inside the distance line, all right, plus 270 inside is not exactly the greatest thing in the world, but given the fact that you're going to get leverage against what I think is going to be a popular opponent, I think he's certainly in play. So we're kind of off to a pretty good start with being able to play some of these fighters. Um, okay. Gomes versus Kovalevich. Okay, so this one is going to be probably a one-sided fight. In other words, with respect to DFS. I don't think we're going to play any of the Kovalevich. But let's see about Gomes. The problem with the Gomes, her price is 9,400, and to be able to play her, you're really going to need a first round finish, or at the very worst, like a second round finish accompanied by multiple knockdowns and takedowns. And when you look at the inside the distance line, let's see. I mean, her inside is really not great. Well, it depends where you look here. I mean, one place has it at plus 200, others minus 200. Um, oh, it doesn't win as minus 200. So she's not favored even to finish. So it's just going to be a very difficult price to pay. So I'm probably going to be off of that side, at least with in identifying who the best plays are. And Kovalevich again just doesn't win often enough here. All right, Mansour Abdul Malik versus Dustin Tudorovich. So this is probably going to be, with the exception of Dos Santos, this is going to be the best play. I mean, I imagine his inside the distance line is going to be minus 200. Let's just see. Um, Even better. I mean, minus 225. Not to mention the fact that he's got takedown upside. I mean, this is clearly, I mean, in my opinion, the best of these big favorites here. So you play something like this. Tudorovich on the other side, again, just doesn't win often enough, I don't believe. So I think Abdul Malik, very, very strong favorite, going to be high owned. So you have to make sure to get different other spots, but very strong play. Luana Pinheiro versus Jillian Robertson. So I hope that she's going to have a minus 110 inside the distance line. Yeah, she will. So Jillian Robertson, really, really strong submission grappler. And her inside the distance line is extremely strong as well. So we have minus 160 to finish just for her. And her price is 9,200. I think it's totally reasonable. Um, she doesn't really put the hammer on with respect to ground and pound. That's one of the issues. which is why, listen, when we get to GPPs and things and really, the lottery, for example, I think that you'll be able to make a case for somebody like Gomes because even though Gomes is inside the distance line is worse than Robertson's, I think Gomes's ceiling is higher. I think that she can get multiple things going on with knockdowns and takedowns and stuff. Where Jillian Robertson really, I mean, her ceiling is just kind of, a takedown and a sub. So she's not really. Let me just see. I don't think she got more than 110. No, she is not. Well, here's this one, and against Cachoeira, which always seems to get one. Cachoeira always gives up the points. Um, so she can get 110, but it's that's really the max. And I don't like this last fight where she went to a kind of a boring decision. I mean, that was fine. 13 minutes of control time. I mean, what else can you ask of her? And she only got 102 points, so not easy to get there at that price. But as a matter of fact, I mean, Malik has just got to be a better play. I mean, he could lay out some punishment, some ground and pound and things like that that Robertson really doesn't lay out. So she's definitely a good play, but definitely not as good as Malik, I think. All right. And Pinheiro, uh, unfortunately, again, just doesn't win often enough to be considered here. All right, so we have Gerald Meerschaert versus R. DeRitter. I forget his full name. It's a weird fight. I mean, this guy was doing very well in other promotions, and I brought him in to fight Gerald Meerschaert, and Meerschaert just is always live. I mean, he's always live for these late round subs. I mean, I was at this Shabazian fight. It happened like 5 feet in front of me, and he just saw it happening. I mean, he just literally saw it happening. Shabazian was like killing him in the first round, just murdered him. And then the second round, it just I don't know. It's like I just watched the fight. It's like it's crazy. And you just saw it happening. He just got the takedown and just slowly and methodically worked for the submission and got it. And it doesn't matter whether he's, look at some of these numbers. Whether he's 9K, he can get there. If he's 7,200, he can get there. 6,900, he can get there. Then he can get KO'd as well. Um, and he can get controlled as well by someone like Petrosky who can take him down a lot. So he's just always in play, and his opponent is just kind of always in play. So let's take a look and see what Ritter looks like here. I don't imagine his inside the distance line is particularly strong. I would say probably plus 200. Let's see. Yeah, about that plus 180. But he's got takedowns, and then if he can get Meerschaert to the ground and mind his P's and Q's and not get subbed, he can get, a bunch of control time and whatever. So definitely in play. And Meerschaert is just always in play for a sub. And it really doesn't even matter who he's up against. So he's going to be part of every underdog pool. All right, we have Bernardo Sopaj versus uh, what's the name? Ricky Tercios. And I don't know why I like the Tertios side of this, even in DFS. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's look at Sopaj here. Inside the distance line is not great, like plus 180, 170, but he does have takedown upside. And Tercios has been known from time to time to give up takedowns. He gave up like 7 or something like that against Natividad, but he got 2 of his own. And here's the key: he got 3 reversals. So look, against Rosas, I mean, he was just kind of only 7 significant strikes, and he got taken down the whole fight, pretty much. But got a win over Heastand after getting taken down. He got 2 of his own against Heastand. I like this. I mean, I like the Tercio side of this. I really do. So yeah, I mean, Topaz looks pretty good, but I think Tercios is I don't know. He had one fight where he looked really bad against like Sahabi. He were just basically did nothing. It was kind of crazy if you watch that fight back. But every other fight that I've seen from him, I mean, he brings it, man. He's spicy. So I like him here, and I'm definitely going to play him in DFS. All right, so we're now at the main event, and um, all right, let's just call this what it is. I mean, Carlos Prates has a lot of power, and he certainly is live to knock Magny out in pretty short order. But a couple of things. Number one, he doesn't really do that. I mean, he picks his spots. Sometimes fights kind of a boring fight, and then he just unloads on somebody and kills them. Okay. And if you go back and look at some of his fights, you'll see what I mean. Even the Trevin Giles fight, he wasn't doing that great. And then he just nailed him. And then the Jin Young Lee fight was kind of whatever, and then he nailed him. Charles Radke got him pretty, you know, like a minute, 13 seconds ago in the first round, whatever. So he definitely, and then he's got KO. So he definitely has it in him. But here's the thing, he's 9,600. And the reason why he's 9,600 is for two reasons. Number one, he's one of the biggest favorites. And number two, it's 5 rounds. But the 5 rounds is not really going to help him. In other words, like Prates doesn't need 5 rounds to prove his point here. He's going to get that. If he gets that win, it's going to be probably in the first round or two. And is that going to be enough at 9,600? I actually don't think so. Like for Prates to really get there, he's got to either get him out of there in the first minute where he gets the quality win bonus, or I think multiple knockdowns. I think one knockdown and a win in the first round is worth like 105-ish. That's not going to be enough, I don't think, at 9,600. Maybe you get a knockdown in the first round and then get him out of there in the second round. That's going to be good enough, but I don't know. And I'll tell you something else. Magny's a pain in the neck. Okay, like if you don't get him out of there and really dominate him quickly, he can do some nasty stuff to you. So like this Mike Malott fight, for example, Michael Malott was all over him in the first round, but he just kept fighting and fighting and fighting. Ian Machado Gary, he was kind of outclassed in that one, a little annoying. The Phil Rowe fight, he kind of, dragged him into deep waters and won a split decision there. This Morales fight, I guess he just got tooled on. I don't know. Maybe this is wishful thinking to think that Magny can kind of hang in there. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do it. Let's see what these inside the distance lines are. First of all, he just doesn't win enough. I mean, he's plus 550. And I don't even think Peraza is going to be that popular. So I don't know. So I'm kind of inclined to fade this fight. If you want to know the truth. So what do we got here? I mean, just to kind of summarize, I kind of want to fade the main event. I sort of want to fade the next highest priced fighter, that being was it Jillian? No, or was it Gomes? Yeah. And I think I want to live sort of in this mid-range, like Ramius could be a good play. Blackshear, Sopaj, DeRitter, you know what I mean? These guys could all be kind of good plays. Um, even Robertson going down a little bit. And I think these mid-range fights are very, very, very live. Like the Radke Semmelsberger fight, the Stamen Blackshear fight, like I mentioned, the Ramius, Bolanos fight. And the reality is this Dos Santos fight is just kind of a theoretical lock. I'm not going to play 100% of him in the 150 max just because of ownership, but from a math perspective, that's really where you want to start your lineups. And I'm sorry, and the Malik play is I think clearly the best overall. So I'm not saying you have to play something exactly like this, but if you played say Dos Santos, you could play two of these good favorites pretty well with some of the decent underdogs we talked about. All right, so that's going to do it. We're going to do a betting breakdown hopefully tomorrow, and that's going to do it. Good luck, everybody.